to order. And if you could all rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Alderman Strelchuk is absent. Alderman Bushy?
Here.
Alderman Meyer?
Here.
Alderman Hancher?
Here.
Alderman Garrow?
Here.
Alderman Parrish?
Here.
Alderman Schneider?
Here.
Alderman Nurbin?
Here.
Mayor Worth?
Here. We have a quorum. The first item of business is personal appearances and public comment. If you would like to make a statement about something that's not on the agenda tonight, now is an opportunity. If you want to talk about something that's on the agenda, in fact, we've had a few people register to speak, please fill out one of these sheets and give it to a staff member, and we'll call on you when we approach that item. But if you'd like to speak about anything that's not on the agenda, please come to the microphone and you have 5 minutes. Is there anybody? Seeing none, we will move on. Public officials reports. I only have one thing that I'd like to briefly mention. Well, two things. If you are interested in the future of our fire department, there was an interesting discussion in the meeting that just ended, and I think that's worthwhile for somebody who's watching this to go back and listen to. And secondly, we've made a little procedural change. The council will have to decide going forward whether they are going to continue it, but we have these committee of the whole meetings before the council meeting. I think it may add to some efficiencies, but for the public, something that's particularly interesting. It's a little extra work by staff, but I think maybe it might be a lot of extra work. But there's a report by each of our departments included in the packet. Provides interesting crime and fire and trees being cut down and voting issues, and those are interesting reports if you want to understand what happens at City Hall. And I think that they're not only worthwhile for the council to make sure we know what the city staff's doing, but I think they're really good information for the public. So I'd recommend that people check those out from time to time. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We do have a heavy agenda tonight, so I'll keep my remarks brief. Just one quick item of update. The spring 2022 election is 4 weeks away, and coming up in the next few weeks, early in-person absentee voting will be occurring here at City Hall starting on March 22nd. That will run through April 1st. So March 22nd through April 1st, early in-person absentee voting between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. in City Hall. And then 4 weeks from today, the spring election will take place on Tuesday, April 5th. And all polling locations in Mequon will be open between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m.
Thank you. On our consent agenda tonight, we have 7 sets of minute meetings, or all 6, and 1 report, as well as a resolution designating Mequon as the all-important Bee City USA. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Well, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Then those items are approved. We have 3 ordinances on our agenda tonight. The first ordinance is Ordinance 2022-16-17, and this is to revise the membership of the Architectural Board. This was recommended by Public Welfare on January 11th. We had a first reading at the Common Council on February 8th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Bushy?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Hancher?
Aye.
Alderman Garrow?
Aye.
Alderman Parrish?
Aye.
Alderman Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin?
Aye.
And that ordinance passes. I think that will be a relief to the new mayor. The next item is Ordinance 20, and I'd like to thank Public Welfare for moving that item along. The next item is Ordinance 2022-16-18. This is an ordinance related to residential swimming pools and the safety measures required for them. It says recommendation forthcoming by Public Welfare February 8th. My understanding is that Public Welfare recommended this to the council on February 8th. The first reading was also at the Common Council meeting on February 8th. There are 3 people who have registered to speak, and we will have you each get an opportunity to speak in just a moment. But first, are there any questions, not positions, but does the council have any questions for our staff members first? Okay, hearing none, I will call on the 3 people who have registered to speak. There are 2 people who have registered in support and 1 in opposition. So I'm going to do 1 and then 1 and then 1. The first person who's here is Amber Schrader, who's speaking for, or no, excuse me, I have that backwards. Scarlett Johnson for Amber Schrader, I apologize. And she's came to speak in support of the ordinance change.
I'm here speaking for Amber Schrader, and she wrote this letter. Mequon Common Council, I am grateful to all of you for the work you do for our community. I'd like to personally thank you for all the work and consideration that has gone into updating the Mequon pool and fence ordinances. I believe this issue should be tabled because the notice was not given properly. The packet and the information sent out did not use the correct terminology and referred to pool covers instead of pool safety covers. It needs to be acknowledged that a pool cover and a pool safety cover are entirely different things that cannot be interchanged. This information that was given to Common Council members and to the city only cites pool covers and gives a false idea of a flimsy pool cover that cannot withstand the weight of a power safety cover and does not inhibit the same safety standards of a power safety cover. By using the term pool cover, you have misled readers, the community, and the Common Council into believing the pool cover is just your ordinary everyday pool cover, when in fact it's an incredibly safe and reliable safety feature used to secure a pool from being used when not authorized. While there is a lot of information widely available to all of you on the safety and efficacy of pool covers, I wanted to personally share with you how much safer I feel my pool is with this automatic cover on it. With an automatic cover, I am in full control of when and for how long my pool is accessible. This means that my children and my family are protected at a level a fence could not provide for me. As noted in the documents you have all received, the majority of child drownings actually happen from children who live at the residence with the pool. A fence does not and never will protect these children. An automatic safety cover does. It also protects anyone who may wander onto my property, as the pool is impenetrable with the cover on it. In fact, the safety cover can withstand the weight of 2,000 pounds or more, with most covers having a safety standard rating of at least 485 pounds. Adding a pool to your property is a major responsibility, and any pool owner will tell you that safety is their #1 concern. That's why I choose an automatic pool cover to protect my children, but also the children in this community. While neither a fence or a cover can provide absolute guarantees of safety, giving residents of Mequon the option to choose which safety feature suits them best, their family, their neighbors, and their budgets is important. Many communities around the state of Wisconsin have adopted similar ordinances to give their residents the choice. It is worth noting that under the current ordinance, I would be required to have a fence around my pool, but ironically, I have a massive pond in my backyard that is very accessible to all neighborhood residents that would remain unfenced or open. Neighborhood kids routinely play, fish, explore, and even swim in the ponds located around the city of Mequon, all without a fence to keep them safe. One of Mequon's greatest gems is the amazing river that flows through our city, another huge water safety hazard that residents safely navigate on their own without a fence. All of these open water hazards can be accessible by residents, including children, and the city has seen very little issues with them. Also worth mentioning, an automatic pool cover saves the resident and the city thousands of gallons of water each year. The pool cover eliminates the majority of evaporation experienced from homeowners without a cover, while also reducing the amount of chemicals needed to treat the pool. This is a huge benefit to the city and to our local water supply. I myself have been to plenty of pools that are fenced in, and they do not have working latches, correctly installed safety gates, or fences that have been broken and not repaired, all of which leave the pool accessible to the person the fence is meant to protect. I have seen 4-year-olds who cannot yet swim, but they're tall enough to open a pool gate and let themselves into a pool area. I have seen teenagers hop the fence because it's more fun than opening the gate. I have seen fence gates tied open to allow visitors to come and go freely, and left that way for days or weeks. I point this out because it's important to acknowledge the false sense of security a fence ordinance can project. Just because you're required to have a fence does not mean it works. And it does not mean the children inside the homes are safe, and does not mean outsiders will stay on the outside. Please consider voting yes to updating our pool and fence ordinance to reflect more current safety standards and features that have been introduced to the industry that many other communities, including Cedarburg, River Hills, Green Bay, Wales, Stevens Point, Grafton, Kohler, Wausau, Sturgeon Bay, and Howard, to name a few, have acknowledged and implemented into their city codes. While we can all agree no safety feature is going to be 100% perfect, and supervision of a pool is actually what saves lives, this updated ordinance is important and relevant to moving Mequon forward. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. The next person to register to speak is Greg Golden of Evergreen Road, who speaks in opposition to the ordinance. Mr. Golden.
Good evening. I'm not a big public speaker, so I'm a little nervous, but I do agree with a lot of the points that she has made in regard to the automatic pool cover. The problem that I have is that the automatic pool cover requires human intervention to close that pool cover. It is not closed unless you close it. The way the ordinance is written now, the fence requires self-closing, self-latching gates, which when you look at any study, that is by far the safest way to protect a pool. If we really want to be safe and known as the safe city, let's incorporate both. But I don't think you can have one or the other. The pool cover has to be closed. Okay? Are you going to close it every night? I've done some research. The pool covers, a lot of people complain they retain the heat in the water, and they don't like that. So they like to leave the covers open. Somebody's going to die. It's going to happen. I don't think we can just rely on someone physically closing the cover. The other question is, let's say the pool cover malfunctions and it is not closable, and the repairman can't get there for 2 weeks. Does that pool then sit uncovered for 2 weeks until they can repair it? That could be a problem in my mind. So, I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Golden.
Thanks.
The next person to register to speak is Randy, I'm guessing Randy Finco from Great Lakes Pools. Mr. Finco. And he's speaking in support of the ordinance.
Good evening. I've been in the business for 43 years, installing automatic covers for 15. They are a product that's been around a long time, and it does, give a lot of positive aspects to the safety of swimming pools. The covers are well made. I have some samples here if you'd like to see them, that they provide total environment and people and dogs and pets and everything out of the pool. Where fencing, animals and things can still get through the fence areas, and animals are drowned in a pool if it doesn't have a cover on it. These covers do seal off totally. You cannot push the cover open. You can't penetrate it. It's not like a solar blanket that a lot of people are thinking maybe this is what it is, something that just floats on the surface. If they don't work properly, they can be closed manually. So it's not something that breaks. We've been on a lot of calls that, cover doesn't close. We have an emergency service for that. So we can get over there and actually pull the thing shut and find out what the problem is with it. So fences, when I was a kid, they were put there for me to climb. any way to get into a pool area. So, so if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Other than that, it's a great product that's been around for 15 plus years.
Thank you, Mr. Finko. We'll turn this to the council, and they may have questions. We'll see. I would like to clarify one thing, and whether you table this tonight, that's certainly up to the council. I'm not really taking a position one way or another on that. But I do want to clarify that the notice that was given by the city complied in every respect with, we gave proper notice. The notice doesn't use the term pool cover or automatic safety cover. It talks about related to residential swimming pools. That's what's noticed. The ordinance itself uses the term automatic safety cover and defines that term in multiple places. The term pool cover, you guys can make up your own mind whether that is an appropriate shorthand or not, but that's used in staff's memo, not in any sort of public notice. So in case somebody's watching, the city didn't give improper notice. Whether there's from a discussion standpoint, it should have been phrased differently. That's up to each of you. But I'll then open this up. Again, first, are there questions before people start telling us what they believe? Alderman Parrish?
Quick question. I read in there the ordinance as proposed, if we approve it, would have an alarm after 15.
Staff person who has worked on this, please.
It's Brian.
Brian? Oh, yeah, it's Brian.
Well, certainly it was a little bit of a joint effort. Effectively, what would be required under the ordinance as it's proposed is that you would be required to have an alarm in two circumstances. The first circumstance would be in the situation where you, in lieu of a fence, had one of these power safety covers. And in that point, an alarm would be one of the options that they could use for additional security. The other is the circumstance where
option or requirement. Let's be clear in our language.
It would be an option. Well, let me rephrase that.
And at least one of the following.
For that circumstance, it would be required plus one of the additional options. In the case of a pool that was surrounded on three sides by a fence and the fourth side was the house, an alarm is an option that would be required. Could be a door alarm within the building. It could be a couple other things as well, but it wouldn't be mandatory in that circumstance.
So to rephrase it, no one could run into the pool area if there's no fence without an alarm going off.
Assuming that the alarm is activated as it's supposed to, correct.
Okay, that's how I read it.
Any other questions? If not, is there Alderman Meyer?
I'm a little concerned with the wording, just to the fact of, I don't know.
Can you pull your microphone closer or speak louder?
I'm a little concerned with the wording. I don't know if we're defining enough the wording for what type of covers are being allowed. I mean, it's pretty generic how we're describing that, I would think.
There is a testing rating that's listed for a power safety cover, that it has to meet a certain ASTM rating. And if that cover does not meet that rating, then it would not be an approved cover.
So it's going to come to you guys first to get approved, that cover?
Well, that's one of the concerns staff had with this, because if they already have a pool, we don't have a mechanism right now to have them take a permit out for a cover. We'd have to add that to our fee schedule, because currently right now, if you have a pool, it gets a permit with the fence at the same time. But if somebody wants a retrofit, there really isn't a permit process in place right now, so that's something we'd have to change.
So in the meantime, we pass this, but we don't have anything in place to actually enforce that.
again, for existing ones, it's, the fence is there. That was one of the concerns we had, is what happens to all the existing pools with existing fences, and they decide they want to change something. Is that going to trigger some sort of permit or inspection? We didn't see anything in there that stated that.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Boucher.
I think a number of my comments would repeat actually with what the first individual had said, so I'm going to just jump to a few quick points. And that
Are we discussing the ordinance or asking questions right now?
Oh.
This was supposed to be questions, then we'll take a
And
motion of
no
some sort and then
questions.
have discussion, if that's okay.
Fine by me.
Alderman Kirill,
I have a question of the pool installer. I saw at our meetings at public welfare when we went through this, I saw a picture of a family of 4 standing on the pool cover, and there was even a sway to it. It was that strong. How many pounds of weight can one of these pool covers take? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I saw pictures of them in our, there's all kinds of stuff they brought to public welfare that about the specs and everything, and I saw a family of 4 standing on them. It didn't, it was. All right, thank you.
Alderman Urban.
I looked up the ASTM spec that's in reference, and I think it covers more than just automatic motorized pool covers. It also covers manually applied covers. Some of them are actually nets. I know where the ordinance is geared towards the powered automatic type, but the load ratings vary. I think the minimum, according to the ASTM spec, is 485 pounds.
Are we asking questions or
I'm just
comment?
Clarifying that it's perhaps not defined completely well enough.
Well, why don't we open this up for comments, because that's a comment. So we'll put everybody on the same footing then. That's a comment. So we're discussing the ordinance. That's fine. I just wanted to be clear. Typically, I've allowed unlimited questions as long as they're questions, but we try to stick to the 2 comments. Alderman Parrish.
Thank you. I am struggling with this, by the way, this whole ordinance. I've got a lot of comments from homeowners. So my question is for the city attorney, because the comments have been that this will adversely affect the HOA association docs, that what we're passing is in direct conflict with the association docs throughout the city, and that will have an adverse effect on insurance policies for anyone with a pool. So please explain what unintended side consequences there would be.
Sure. There would be none. Just as we have all sorts of zoning rules that are different than HOA rules, the same would be true here. While we may have a ordinance that allows for something that is more permissive, the HOA certainly has the ability within their regulations to be more restrictive than what we would require. And so that would be the case. As it relates to insurance,
Co-star.
I would suspect, yes. As it relates to insurance, again, the fact that we allow it under our code really doesn't impact what, whether you're going to be able to get insurance, what the price for that policy would be. Ultimately, that's between the homeowner and their insurance carrier to say, this is, I have a pool, this is how it's secured, and, they would set the price then based on that.
Other questions? Alderman Gill?
Comments or questions?
Yeah, well, let's go to comments.
All right.
Do we have a motion? Typically we want to have a motion that we're then discussing.
I'd make a motion to table to send it back to public welfare to have the power safety cover more defined, and also take a look at the ASTM specification guide, and maybe set a minimum specification guide that we would have to go to on the cover.
If that's the Motions to table are not debatable. If that's the flavor of where we want to go, do you want
I will
to?
withdraw that until after the other comments.
Alderman Garrell?
Okay, we spent, I don't know, maybe 2.5 hours on this. I mean, it's at public welfare. And we talked, again, they were called power safety covers. They're completely different than a pool cover. I moved to Mequon in 1999. I had a pool in my backyard. When I bought the property, it was 15 years old. There was no fence around it at all. He said all I needed was a sign that said danger. And I ran that for 6 years until a neighbor complained that I didn't have a fence, and I spent $16,000 on a fence then. And here's the problem with the fences. I have 6 latches on my fence. There's thawing and freezing and thawing and freezing and thawing. And those latches don't work the first year. You have to mess around with them. This last year I had the pool company come out and fix 4 latches. So yeah, you can, when you first buy them, you know, they work really fine. At 4 latches. Every year I have problems with the deer jumping over that fence, impaling themselves once in a while, and breaking some of the aluminum coming over the top of that fence. I have squirrels and rabbits and everything else that end up in the pool with my fence. And the safety level of it is pretty much nowhere near what a safety cover would be. That is a power safety cover. I use a cover in the summertime to keep the heat in. It costs about $300. I use a really strong one in the wintertime. That cost me less than $2,000. A power safety cover is closer to $22,000. These things are incredible. When I watched the way that they were put together, they're much, much safer than a fence. And he said, well, how do we, one of the arguments that we had there was, well, geez, you know, how do you enforce this? Well, you certainly don't enforce fences at all. Nobody ever came out to my property in 16 years and looked at my fence. I keep that open all the time when I'm wheeling yard waste in and out and cleaning the gardens and moving things around. And it works really good to keep the dogs in. But it's not as safe as a pool safety cover. If a kid gets inside that fence, he can go in the pool and drown. If the safety cover's in, they can't even get in there. They can't drown. I looked at some of the guidelines. They said that in here it says that 300 children under age 5 drown in pools every year. And I looked and said 87% of them are at that person's home with the family. You know, they probably all have fences. You couldn't possibly drown with the safety cover on. So when as the one lady said, well, Jesus was miswritten. Well, it was pretty much miswritten, because just about all of the things, if you called it a power safety cover, it's not a pool cover in a sense. State statute, they also, we talked about the state statute, and state statute was written. I'll read a little bit about what we went over at public welfare, because a lot of thought went into this before we decided to vote for it. A state statute was written before any modern day technologies existed. State statutes will almost always be the last to change. That being said, flexible, forward-thinking communities have been updating their ordinance to embrace the new technologies as they come forward. State statute guidelines say local ordinances cannot be more restrictive than those of the state. They can, however, be less restrictive and tailored to each individual community. We mentioned about 12 different ones one of the speakers did right here in the state. The power safety covers are completely different than, like I said, than any pool covers. It's locked and closed. Some of the great things about it is, on my pool, when I leave that pool
cover off during the summertime. And I hate doing this, but I probably have to put 6 inches of water in a week from the well. I'm putting 6 inches of water in a week because it evaporates. You don't get evaporation when these things are closed. It preserves energy. You don't use very many chemicals at all. It keeps leaves and breeze out. It takes frogs, salamanders, rabbits, squirrels, deer that can never get in there, which is great. It's environmental friendly. And from what I read in the stuff, it was, yeah, like the person said, thousands of pounds. It's safer for the community than a fence. Going on for enforcement, they talked about how are we going to enforce it? Enforce it like anything else. If you get a complaint, you go out there and you do that, but you don't enforce fences at all. Don't enforce fences at all. And then Jack mentioned just here recently, well, what if a person has a pool and then they turn around and get a safety cover? Or has a fence and then turn around and get a safety cover? They're probably going to keep that fence up. I'm not going to take down a $16,000 fence just because I have a new safety cover. There's a lot of, the one person said about the natural man-made hazards. Right behind this, they have a pond that the kids play in. And we have the river. There's no fence along the river and the piers. There's Rotary Park doesn't have fences. I mean, there's all kinds of natural hazards in Mequon. And I mentioned at the other meeting, I said more people have died in the river in the last 20 years than have died in any pools in Mequon. A lady just a few years ago walked in and they found her down the river. So I'm looking at this as the pool cover costs about $20,000 to $22,000. A fence today, that one I paid $16,000 for, would probably be in the mid-20s. It's just unreasonable to ask a person to put a fence around it, a fence around a power safety cover, and spend close to $50,000 in the end. I like to look at this, it's almost like asking somebody to put a fence around a power safety cover is tell them to put on sunscreen before they go to bed. There's no reason for it. I think it's time for us to update our ordinances in line with what other surrounding communities are doing. And the last thing is City Hall, and I said this when I first ran for alderman, I just wanted to state it again tonight, because when we bring stuff before the Common Council or bring stuff before staff, it's usually the first thing is the status quo, is the default mode is no, we don't want to do this. I believe that, and I've always believed that City Hall exists because residents pay taxes and our salaries and fund our projects. Unlike a competitive private business, residents have nowhere else to go. Some communities now embrace the idea that taxpayers be treated better than a private business treats their best customers. I think that's a novel idea. This resident came before us, and other residents will come before us in the future. This is a good idea. It's safer than a fence. I can tell you that because I've had one now for 16 years. And those latches, a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old could lift them up and go in whenever they wanted to. And somebody could go in there and drown if I had a power safety cover. And the way this ordinance is written, if there's motion in the pool,
Mark,
the alarm
I've been
goes off.
trying to be patient, but we're at 10 minutes, not 5.
Right, sorry.
No problem.
That's just my point.
And if we're going to table this, just one thought, if we're going to table it, I don't care whether you table it or not, but if we're going to table it, then do we really need to have the whole discussion tonight and have it again next month? But that's up to you guys. Alderman Boucher.
I'll keep my comments very short here. I am leaning towards the tabling option, and part of the reason is in our first December meeting, actually, just to point out overall, the document that we received in our packet was essentially a copy from our last public welfare meeting, which did not note that actually this went through December, January, and February reviews. And it wasn't just a resident who brought this up, but at that first meeting, there were at least 3, 4, I'm not sure how many residents that were there behind this. And in that initial document as well, we had a nice cover star brochure that was in the packet that had the pictures that Alderman Garrell referred to and all of the information and specifications that are not in this packet right now. And so then on top of it, there's an issue on like taking issue with the responsible individual definition. Well, the city attorney went through, that was one of our issues that we went through and discussed. And it's in the actual ordinance, but at the, the description is saying that it isn't. So I think that there's an issue as far, especially as the resident, the initial speaker said, it's not quite representing what the ordinance is saying, and it's throwing things off. And just a quick comment as far as latches go. Anybody here who has kids, I'm sure they have, even though that there's a doorknob, to the basement and all that, we've all had those extra little plastic hitches that end up causing more grief for us as adults than it does the kids. But we put those latches on there, and that's not a requirement at all for these latches, which are often, open, easy broken, and definitely easy for a 2 or 3 year old who's inquisitive, looking at the nice bright blue water. That's always fun to go to, whereas with the automatic pool cover or the electronic pool cover, they don't see the water. So I would be leaning towards tabling it because of those omissions.
If this is tabled, I do believe that staff ought to be including in the packet the information that the proponents also provided. So, that would be a request. But Alderman Nervin?
On the chance that it gets tabled, I think the Public Welfare Committee might want to better define the load rating they're seeking, because the ASTM spec is 485 pounds minimum. And some people might have it stuck in their head what they saw in the brochure for a specific model that one of the people that brought this forward had in mind, and it likely exceeds that. And maybe perhaps better defined the safety features that prevent inadvertent access from a kid walking in. Some of these have keys, so you have to have a key to actually actuate it. If you don't have access to the key, you can't open the pool without access to it. I realized it was probably left a little open to allow for other ideas, but those are, I think, a couple of key things that probably should be defined if we're going to pass this, because I can see some of the arguments for it being safe. I mean, some of these, I have a friend up in Grafton who says you can park a truck on it. And but if we don't define it fully, we might get something other than what we thought we're voting for.
Alderman Meyer.
Is everybody finished talking? Maybe. I'm not against this whatsoever. And I agree with Alderman Irvin then. I think it just needs to be defined more. And then once we do that, we can bring it back and then hopefully approve it. So I think it should go back to public welfare. I make a motion to table this and go back to public welfare and specifically look at the power safety cover definition.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
The motion to table isn't debatable. All in favor of tabling, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it, and it's tabled. We get to talk about it again. The next item on the agenda is ordinance 2022-1619, and this is an ordinance that has outdoor burning regulations. This was recommended by Public Welfare in January, first reading at the Common Council in February. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman Irvin.
I had a question. There's a section, I'm trying to nail it down here. I didn't highlight it, but section on using propane type devices, gas devices on your deck, requiring it to be 10 feet away from all structures. Would that include a patio heater?
Chief, could you please step forward or come to the table?
Would it include a patio heater or sometimes they have the tabletop, little gas-powered, decorative flame.
Or a grill that has a,
Well, grills are
we put-
different. That's cooking. That's a different,
Oh.
different section of this.
I don't know how to answer that.
And would the fence on the side of my deck be considered a structure because it's higher than 6 inches off the ground, which I think is our legal definition of a structure? Because if it is, it's illegal to use my patio heater now.
Because you're saying it's too close to the fence?
I have it strapped to the edge of the fence so it doesn't blow over in windstorms. Yeah, it's the only way to keep it from blowing over.
I don't know how to answer that.
I think we should table this to look at.
So I do.
Oh.
The language that you're specifically looking at is on page 53, I believe, under sub 4B, which provides wood burning features shall be at least 20 feet away from any structure, except that features which are solely fueled by propane or natural gas shall be placed at least 10 feet from any structure. I think that the answers that you're looking for are not the answers you want, which is that yes, a propane, solely propane feature would have to be at least 10 feet away from a fence, which would be a structure under our code.
How about a raised deck?
Well,
Raised deck that's more than 6 inches off the ground is a structure also, isn't it? So are you saying that we can't have heaters on our decks?
If you sit under the heater, does your head catch on fire?
well, there's no provision in the ordinance we're looking at for common sense. It's
Right.
it's just as written. I hate to draw that conclusion, but I think I might have to propose tabling this to clarify that, because I don't want to make everyone's patio heater or little tabletop gas-powered heater illegal to use. Perhaps better language would be in accordance with manufacturer's instructions, because they all have safe setback distances for things if you read the manual like I do, because I'm a geek and an engineer. I just see that's one part is a little bit problematic.
You want to propose an amendment, or do you want to table it?
I'm interested if anyone else has any comments before I use the T word.
Alderman Meyer.
Well, yeah, that'd be interesting to kind of went across and I didn't see that. And then, I mean, I've got a couple of patio heaters myself that probably wouldn't allow me to have them on my deck.
And what about those little decorative, they call them fireplaces, but they're not. They're like little tables that have a little flame-looking thing in them that people put on their decks also. They don't put out much heat, but they're decorative. That would have a propane
to be 10
flame,
feet away.
and it goes on decks.
I would not have a problem with tabling it, but
I hate to table two things in one night, but especially back to the same committee.
Hey,
For that reason alone, I'll make a motion to table it, just to clean it up.
back to public welfare.
Back to public.
I mean, public welfare.
is there a
Doesn't make it
second?
up here.
Second.
Motions to table are not discussable. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed?
No.
Okay. We have, but the ayes have it, but we'll record Alderman Boucher as a no. Later, I want to know why you know, but the next item, we're now done with our ordinances. The first resolution, and we have a consultant here, I'd like to thank them for their patience, is a resolution awarding the sale of $9,620,000 of general obligation promissory notes and levying a tax in connection with therewith. This was recommended this evening unanimously by the Finance Personnel Committee. If you can give a brief presentation, and then we'll see if there are questions.
Greetings, council members. I'd like to introduce this evening here with us. We have a couple of representatives from Ellers and Associates, our municipal advisors. We have Brian Raymer, who is going to walk through. You should have a copy of the sale day report that happened earlier this morning, and he's here to walk through the results with us.
Thank you, Jennifer.
If you all would not mind turning just to the first page, I'm just going to kind of walk through that summary. And then if you have questions on tables or kind of want a deeper look, I'll walk through that as well. But that said, you did have a very successful sale this morning. We received 7 bids on your general obligation promissory notes. So this was originally the $9,620,000 that you approved about a month ago. We did and were able to downsize that due to a multitude of factors. One of the projects was reduced by $25,000. In addition to that, we received a premium, and in addition to that, we also had lower costs of issuance. So those 3 things allowed for the $130,000 difference in which this goes down. So you'll notice the numbers here reflect $9,490,000 versus the $9,620,000 that you see in your agenda. So with that said, selling competitively helped you save some money. We always kind of recommend this process when you have an issue of this size. So you'll see in the middle of this page, the $300,000 that selling competitively afforded you. And then beyond that, we just kind of wanted to identify here that this does come with a call feature starting in March 1st of 2029. So you give that financial flexibility should you choose to refinance that at that time. That said, our recommendation, which is at the top of page 2, is to adopt the resolution awarding the sale of $9,490,000 in general obligation promissory notes, and this is Series 2022A. With that said, I'll kind of take any questions you may have on the sale or the process or issuance.
Questions, folks? Alderman Garrell.
I just wanted to say your timing couldn't have been better. I've traded bonds. I've traded for 40 some years when I was in the business, and the war in Ukraine, it was a flight to quality which drove interest rates down just beautifully. So I mean, I hate what's going on over there, but the timing could not have been better across the board. That's what happens when you have these scares. People get flight to quality. They buy government bonds and municipal bonds, and timing couldn't be better. You couldn't have got this at any better time and at any better rate. So congratulations.
Any other comments? Is there, the only comment I'd make, we will need, if somebody's making a motion to approve, they should approve the resolution with the information from the bid completed, and as a procedure, and I should have thought of this before, so I'm going to take responsibility for it. We probably should have updated the actual resolution, filled in the blanks, and passed it out, which I don't think we did. But there are blanks in the resolution that obviously need to be completed based on the information from the sale. So the motion should be a motion to approve based on the sale that was done with the appropriate blanks filled in and the city attorney reviewing to make sure it's done appropriately. Is there such a motion? By the way, this was recommended, I said that by the Finance Personnel Committee. Is there such a motion?
Such a motion submitted.
And a second?
Such a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrell,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nervin,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
And that passes. Resolution 3921, and this is to have a lease agreement in connection with the city's water tower. The finance personnel, and thank you very much for your great results and for showing up, and don't feel like you need to stick around. Although I don't think the rest of our meeting will take very long, but have a good evening and thank you. Resolution 3921, the water tower. Is there a motion? This was recommended to you by finance personnel tonight unanimously. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, or anything else? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And that passes. The next item is Resolution 3922. There's a slight correction. It says this is a second amendment to the cell tower license agreement. It's actually a first amendment. It was determined afterwards. although that doesn't change the appropriateness of the notice. It's simply a clerical error. This is recommended by the Finance Personnel Committee on March 8th, but today. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions, or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The next item, Resolution 3923. This is an amendment to the employment agreement between the city and the city administrator. The Finance Personnel Committee reviewed this evening and unanimously recommends the amendment. Is there a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nerben.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Oh, I wish I could vote no. No, I'm just kidding. Resolution 3917, and this is a third amendment to the development agreement for the Foxtown development. The Finance Personnel Committee recommends this to you this evening. The Common Council tabled it in February, so we need a motion to remove it from the table before we can do anything else.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to remove this from the table. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Hearing none, it is removed from the table. Director Tollefson, if you could give us a brief description. We were fortunate to have a very thorough description at the Finance Personnel Committee and this passed, so hopefully this is not quite as long.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I will not go into any detail. I just was going to comment that Finance and Personnel approved it, and I'm available for any questions.
This would effectively take this outside of a default. The financial impacts are gone. It was a heavily negotiated. I would like to thank staff. They spent a lot of time, as did the developer, in coming to a compromise. Any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nerben.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
And that passes. Resolution 3924. This approves a revolving loan fund in the amount of $100,000 for a new medical clinic on Corporate Parkway. This was recommended by both the Economic Development Board on February 24th and the Finance and Personnel Committee this evening. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments, or suggestions? What's in our packet, does it include the 2 additional requirements? I didn't check.
Yes, it does.
Okay. So the Economic Development Board had added a couple of additional requirements. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nerben.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Yes. Aye.
And that passes. Resolution 3912, and this is an amendment to the agreement with Gathering on the Green. It was recommended by the Park and Open Space Board on January 19th. Public Works, what did you do with this evening?
We did approve this to the recommended amount of $61.15 plus the security deposit of $1,000, and with a direction that we take a look at that. They take a look at the fee schedule, or Finance Personnel takes a look at the fee schedule for this for upcoming events pertaining to a rental and the also for the pumping of the tank. The pricing's got to be increased.
Is there a motion? Alderman Nerben.
I'll second with a little bit of added color. There was also a direction to look at the actual cost of emergency services provided over the 4-day period and formalize some sort of policy regarding the waiving or discounting of that for such events. I think we had endeavored to do it a year ago, but it kind of got lost in the shuffle.
I heard a second, but I'm not sure I heard a motion, or did I? Was it really quiet?
Yeah, there was a motion.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard.
But that same,
yes,
that same thing that
what he said.
Alderman Norman talked about just now was the same thing we talked about last year in doing it. and finding out what the actual costs were and stuff like that.
Okay.
We never really got to it.
Alderman Boucher.
Quick question. You said 6115. Which number is that you're referring to?
That comes from staff recommendation for the total fee. That's
It
page
correlates with
122 in the bottom.
the page with the 3 columns, the leftmost column. The total is 7115 if you add the $1,000 security deposit in,
And then
which is
add the-
refundable if nothing happens.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Resolution 3919. This is to accept the receipt of infrastructure improvements from the Thiensville Mequon Youth Baseball Association for fencing at Riverbar Park. This was recommended by Finance and by Park and Open Space in February. I'm guessing Public Works recommends it this evening, but
Public Works approved it unanimously, so I recommend approval.
Do you move approval?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Resolution 3925, and this is to approve the purchase of a replacement plow truck and associated stuff, as well as a, if I remember correctly,
Mower.
And a mower. This was, what did Public Works do this evening with this?
Public Works approved this unanimously, and I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nervin,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy,
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
And that passes. The next item is the Resolution 3926, and this is a resolution supporting the MT Trails Foundation application for a grant from the Wisconsin Department of Transportation for a potential off-road path on Highland Road from the Ozaki Interurban Trail to Rotary Park. This was recommended by the Bike and Pedestrian Way Commission on March 2nd, and it was also recommended, oh, I shouldn't say that, what did Public Works do this evening?
We did recommend it this evening with some discussion with the fact of that, making sure that we did have final say in a lot of this, and so we were kind of assured that was, so we did approve it and recommend approval.
Sam Azinger, who's the chair of the Bike and Open Space Commission, is here if people have questions. Do you intend to make a statement, or did you want to?
No, I just want to be available to answer any questions that anybody has with regard to. I'm actually here in several capacities. I also serve for the MT Trails Foundation, as well as an interested resident in seeing this develop. So,
Is there a motion?
I mean, a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'm not opposed to this. In fact, I recommend that you pass it. I do think that before you actually agree to the path, there are some things, in the future, there are some things that the council should do better than we've done in the past. And that's acknowledge that there is an ongoing maintenance and replacement cost. Trojan horses bear gifts that sometimes you don't expect. As well as, the group expects at some point that this will be plowed. That is not consistent with what we do with our other bike paths. And so there's some real policy issues ultimately to discuss with this before you get done. I probably won't be here for that, but I think that shouldn't prevent this going forward tonight. And it's to get this done. This needs to be done tonight in order for them to timely apply for the grant.
that is correct. And Mayor, if I can add, because I don't want to come back for that discussion either, we are planning to have an additional $100,000 endowment for the maintenance of the trail, including plowing in the winter months.
That won't cover it. So the city will have a cost.
Certainly, maybe 20, 30 years down the road. But of course, we're also an ongoing foundation. We intend to continue to maintain, develop these things. And I would not allow the possibility of having to replace baseball fences around the baseball fields as a reason not to develop those. It's, certainly is going to be a huge value to this community to have a connection between the interurban trail and Rotary Park to pedestrians and bicyclists. So that's why we're pursuing it, and certainly it's something that we anticipate the foundation is going to stay actively involved in going forward.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of passing the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. The next resolution, 3927, and this is to award the 2022 road improvement contract that we're going to do over $2.6 million of road replacements this year, which is a good thing for Mequon. Public Works, what do you do?
Public Works suspended the rules, and we took up all three, 3928, 3927, and 3929, and approved all through. So I recommend approval for the first one.
So is there a motion to suspend the rules, take up all three, and approve them all?
Sure.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns about it, handling it this way? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Nerben,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy,
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
and Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
And that passes. How about we do the same thing with the next three resolutions that we all did at the sewer? I'll read them. You guys can decide what you want to do. Resolution 3930, this is to repair 5 sewer laterals in Cedarburg Road, which the Sewer Utility District Commission recommended this evening. Resolution 3931, this is to clean and televise 176 sewer laterals in the Lac de Cours, which the Sewer Utility District Commission recommended. And Resolution 3932, this is to clean, examine, and televise sewer mains on Mequon Road between Parkview Drive and Port Washington Road, which was also recommended. Is there a motion to suspend the rules, take up all three, and approve?
Make a motion to suspend
Second.
the rules, take up all three at once.
I hear a first, a second, and a third. We need to call the roll on that.
Alderman Bushy,
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nerben.
Aye.
And just to be clear, you almost have to do a separate motion on suspending the rules. But since nobody's objecting to my ruling from the chair, I think it's okay. But that's not strictly according to Robert's rules. One last resolution we have this evening, and that's Resolution 3933. And this is a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding between the City of Mequon, the Village of Thiensville, the City of Cedarburg, and the Town of Cedarburg in connection with Fire and EMS Department consolidation. This was recommended to you earlier this evening by the Committee of the Whole. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions or comments? If not, please call the roll.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nerben,
Aye.
and Alderman Bushy.
And that passes. And there's one last motion, Alderman Carroll.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.